Welcome to this lesson. I am Obani Kestin. I'll be taking you on the subject Physical and Health Education. For this class, we are still looking at the topic Pathogens, Diseases, and their prevention, but we are taking part 4 of this lesson under the theme Health Education. From the part 1 to 3 of this lesson, we looked at communicable diseases. This part 4 is going to be introducing us to non-communicable diseases. So we are going to be seeing the difference between the communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to define what non-communicable diseases are. You should also be able to explain the nature of non-communicable diseases and state the causes, disease factors, treatments, and prevention of non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases are diseases that cannot be transmitted from person to person, okay? Communicable diseases can be transmitted, but non-communicable diseases cannot be transmitted from an infected person to another person. They are usually chronic. This means that they are long-lasting or constantly reoccurring. Now, the main difference between communicable and non-communicable diseases is that non-communicable diseases are not infectious, okay? They can't be passed on to someone else. Now, non-communicable diseases, when you hear non-communicable diseases, just as communicable diseases, they include a wide range of ailments, okay? Now, this range of ailments could be from mental health disorders, cancers, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, fractures, hormonal conditions, etc. So any range or type of disease that cannot be passed from person to another person is a non-communicable disease. Now, non-communicable diseases are actually the leading cause of disease worldwide, as they result in more deaths than any other cause. Communicable disease can even be curbed by vaccination, but non-communicable diseases don't have anything like vaccination against them. As much as communicable diseases are infectious and can easily pass from one person to the other, they are not even the leading cause of disease in the world today. The leading cause of disease in the world today are non-communicable diseases. Now, according to Wikipedia, which is an online information site, non-communicable diseases, we've abbreviated them as NCDs, okay? These non-communicable diseases caused about 38 million deaths in year 2012. This is just the number of deaths that occurred in 2012 due to non-communicable diseases. About half of these people were below 70 years, and half of them were women. Now we'll be defining non-communicable disease proper. So that non-communicable diseases are chronic diseases that are not contagious. We have established the fact that they are not contagious, right? They are chronic. Chronic simply means a disease that frequently reoccurs, okay? It may be there now, and tomorrow maybe it is treated, and then it occurs again. Such a disease can be seen as chronic. Another way we can define a chronic disease is a disease that lasts for a very long time without disappearing. It is just there. So non-communicable diseases have these characteristics. They are chronic, and they are not contagious. A healthy person cannot get the disease from an infected person, so they are non-contagious. Non-communicable diseases last for long periods of time, and they progress slowly. The problem with non-communicable diseases is that at the onset of the disease, the sick person may not even know that he already has a disease. And that disease may stay in the person and progress slowly. And by the time the symptoms and signs of that disease begin to manifest, the disease has, damaged a lot of things in the person's body, and it becomes very, very life-threatening. So that is the harmful thing about non-communicable diseases. They progress slowly and last for a long period of time. They usually result in sudden deaths. So that is why you may see someone very healthy, but of course this disease has been in the person for a very long time, and then this person suddenly comes down with illness. That simply means that disease has been in the person for a very long time, destroying the body cells and organs. So it results in sudden deaths, especially if the disease is not diagnosed and treated on time. So we have tables here showing the difference between communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases. Communicable diseases, in their transmission, they can be transmitted from an infected person to a healthy person, while non-communicable diseases cannot be transmitted from an infected person to a healthy person. Causes of communicable diseases are microorganisms we call pathogens, while causes of non-communicable diseases are mainly internal factors, okay? And we are going to see those internal factors as we progress in this lesson. Examples of communicable diseases, we have things like typhoid, malaria, tuberculosis, AIDS, measles. You can mention some of them as we have learned in our previous lesson. While examples of non-communicable diseases are things like diabetes, kwashiorkor, marasmus, goiter, cancer. All these diseases are non-communicable. Now, there are 4 main types of non-communicable diseases, and they are given to us by the World Health Organization. These 4 main types are cardiovascular diseases, and under this type we have diseases such as heart attacks and stroke. Another type is cancer. We have different types of cancer. We have skin cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, and others. We have chronic respiratory diseases, and examples are chronic obstructed pulmonary disease and asthma. Then we have diabetes. And then we have types, type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. So these are the 4 main types of non-communicable diseases as given by the World Health Organization. But this is not to say that we don't have other kinds of non-communicable diseases. Other kinds of non-communicable diseases are kwashiorkor, sickle cell anemia, chronic kidney diseases, autoimmune diseases, cataracts, scurvy, high blood pressure, and the list goes on and on. As we said earlier, any disease that cannot be transmitted from one person to another is a non-communicable disease. So there are a whole lot of them. Now, we'll be looking at the risk factors for these diseases. Risk factors, as we defined, are those things or situations that can increase a person's chance of contacting a disease, okay? Anything you do, any kind of lifestyle or eating habits or environment that can make you prone, or make you likely to contact a disease, we define such things as disease factors or risk factors. So some risk factors, we've said that non-communicable diseases are not caused by pathogens, okay? So there are other things that are most likely to cause non-communicable diseases, all right? So they are our dietary habits, the kind of food we eat, the kind of things we put into our body, okay? Remember, it is what you give into your body that your body gives you in return. So if you are always eating healthy foods, you're likely to reduce your chance of coming down with non-communicable diseases. Other factors are environmental factors. Under environmental factors, we have things like pollution, okay? People who live in polluted environments are more prone to contacting non-communicable diseases. For example, people who live in areas that have plenty smoke, such as maybe smoke coming from exhaust pipes. In fact, all these heavily industrialized areas, people who live in the urban areas, in the cities, okay? We have plenty manufacturing companies and plenty cars on the road that emit different kinds of poisonous gases. Okay, such people are more likely to contact non-communicable disease. So this is just an example of an environmental factor that can lead to non-communicable diseases. Then we have another factor, heredity, family background, or history. some people are just likely to contact non-communicable disease because it runs in the family, okay? So, for example, if diabetes runs in a family, it's not a must that you would have diabetes, but there is that possibility that you may experience that illness. So, that is why we must know our family medical background so as to be able to know the kind of lifestyles we have to adjust to decrease our chances of contacting non-communicable diseases. Then we also have random genetic abnormalities. This kind of risk factors, most times we do not have power over them. They are just genetic abnormalities that occur in the body. Then we have obesity, okay? Obesity is one of the leading causes of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, okay? People who are obese are more likely to come down with these diseases. Every year, millions of people die from being overweight. Another risk factor is lifestyle, our lifestyle. Examples of lifestyles that may give rise to non-communicable diseases are alcohol consumption. People who are chronic alcohol abusers put themselves at risk of contacting non-communicable diseases such as cancers, especially lung cancer, diabetes, and heart problems. Smoking is another lifestyle that puts us at risk of communicating non-communicable diseases. Lack of physical activity, when we are not physically active. There are people who lead very sedentary lifestyles. They do not go out, they do not engage in physical activities, they do not even engage in exercises, to improve the body functionalities. So sedentary lifestyle is something that can give rise to non-communicable diseases. Now, according to Wikipedia, the online site we talked about earlier, it says that 5 million people die every year from diseases associated with tobacco use. So you see how lifestyle plays a very, very big role in the development of non-communicable diseases. Now, we must note that these risk factors are not a guarantee that a person will have non-communicable diseases, okay? But as we said earlier, they only increase a person's likelihood of developing these diseases. Now we have here the non-communicable disease causation pathway, okay, how it builds up. There are some underlying determinants of non-communicable diseases, those things that are kind of hidden, but somehow they lead to the development of non-communicable disease across countries. We have globalization as a factor, as an underlying determinant of non-communicable disease. Globalization simply means the ability for people from different regions of the world to come together, interact, interrelate. For example, you may have someone from Nigeria going to live in the USA, all right? So there are lots of globalization. People are moving from one part of the world to other parts of the world. And as they are moving, they are dropping their own lifestyle and habits, and they are taking up the lifestyle and habits of people in those regions of the world that they are moving into. So you are in a part of the world, say in Nigeria, where you're living, perhaps maybe in the rural area where you are just eating fresh foods, fresh fish. You walk some certain miles from your home to the school, and you engage in a lot of physical activities, all right? And then you have the opportunity to move to maybe the UK, where maybe what you now eat is mainly processed foods, canned foods, and all that. And you realize that you don't even need to walk some long distances again. All you just need to do is to hail a cab when you have to move around. Your physical activities has also reduced because right now, instead of walking, you are sitting in a taxi. And a lot of lifestyle changes begins to occur. You begin to imbibe the culture, their eating habits. You see how that globalization can actually affect or increase someone's risk of developing some of these non-communicable diseases. Another one we have is urbanization. Around the world, we have development. Countries are going from underdeveloped to developed countries. We have manufacturing industries around us now. We have a lot of automobiles around us. And all these activities that give rise to development in a nation have a way that they affect us. The toxic or poisonous gases they emit into the air is what we inhale. And by the time these poisonous gases accumulate in our bodies, they give us illness. They give rise to cancer, especially lung cancer and other kinds of diseases. Okay? Then we have population aging. Some people are more prone to having disease as they age. Okay? For example, some kinds of cancer will only appear at the later age of a person's life. So we have population aging as an underlying determinant. Then we have social determinants. This one has to do with what? Our interrelation with other people. Sometimes people allow peer pressure, pressure from their friends to allow them do some certain things. So if you're in a social group or you have friends who abuse alcohol, abuse drugs, and all that, you're likely to be pressurized to also do those kind of things. So these are what we call underlying determinants that lead to these risk factors. Okay? Tobacco use, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, harmful use of alcohol, air pollution. We've talked about urbanization. It can lead to air pollution, age, and heredity. Okay? Now, these risk factors will now lead to what we call intermediate risk factors. What this means is that these risk factors will now work against our bodies to give rise to some silent issues in the body, such as raised blood sugar, raised blood pressure, abnormal blood lipids, overweight or obesity, and abnormal lung functions. Now, these will now give rise to the non-communicable diseases that we've mentioned, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, and chronic respiratory diseases. So you see the non-communicable disease causation pathway, how it goes from one level to another. We'll be looking at the general preventive measures against non-communicable diseases. What are the things we can do to prevent or to at least reduce our risk of developing non-communicable diseases? There are some things that are kind of out of our control, all right? But the much that we can do as individuals, then we must make sure that we do those things to reduce greatly the risk of developing non-communicable disease. For example, if diabetes runs in your family, okay, you may not be able to do anything about that, but you may reduce your chance of developing diabetes by, doing some of these things we are going to be talking about. Now, preventive measures against non-communicable diseases borders on avoiding the risk factors that give rise to them, okay? So if we handle the risk factors that give rise to these diseases, then we are most likely to prevent or at least greatly reduce our chances of developing non-communicable diseases. So the following are things we can do to reduce our risk of contacting non-communicable diseases. The first thing we must do is that we must eat balanced diet. So we must make sure that for every meal we take, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that the 6 classes of food are, represented. We must make sure that we have carbohydrates in our meals, proteins, fats and oil, minerals, vitamins, and water. It's very, very important, eating a balanced diet. Maintaining a healthy weight. Our weight plays a role also. So as we said earlier, one of the risk factors of developing non-communicable diseases is obesity. Okay, so we must constantly make sure that we watch our weights, that we don't become overweight, all right, as being overweight can lead to cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. Another thing we can do is to make sure that we engage in physical exercises, okay? We must always exercise our bodies. Exercising helps our body systems to work at their maximum. In fact, exercising has a whole lot of benefits. It helps to strengthen our immune system. It helps oxygen and blood flow in the body, okay? It helps to circulate blood very well in our bodies, all right? So exercising is very, very vital, and it also helps to keep this kind of diseases away from us. Another thing we must do is to avoid tobacco smoking and excessive intake of alcohol. We must make sure that we do not even start the intake of tobacco in the first place, smoking, okay? As a student or as someone living in a neighborhood, as you grow older, there will be that peer pressure coming from around you, either from your friends or even from some family members or from neighbors. There will be that pressure to try out some of these things like taking alcohol or smoking, okay? But from what we have learned here, we've seen that these things make us prone or increase our risk of developing some diseases. Tobacco smoking and intake of alcohol is something that we must make sure that we do not even start in the first place. As young adults or as teenagers, okay, in our neighborhoods, we have friends. At school, we have friends. And as we grow older, we may see ourselves being pressurized to join some friends to smoke or drink. But from this lesson, we have seen that smoking and drinking can increase our chances of developing non-communicable diseases. So we must not even start in the first place. We must say no to tobacco smoking and the intake of alcohol. Another preventive measure is taking vaccinations against certain infectious diseases that make us prone or susceptible to some of the non-communicable diseases. Okay, some communicable diseases, if we do not take vaccination against them, okay, we know that they come and they kind of lower the immune system. And when the immune system is lowered, the body cannot fight off diseases when they come. So when we take vaccination against those communicable diseases, our body will be strong enough and our immune system will be strong enough to fight off any other kind of disease, whether communicable or non-communicable, that is trying to invade our body. Staying away from processed foods and red meats. Processed foods most times are packaged in some containers that, medical research has shown that are kind of harmful to our body, especially plastics. There are particular plastics that are used to package foods, and then when we take food from those kind of containers over time, they build some of these diseases in our body and will come down with illnesses. So as much as possible, we must reduce our intake of processed foods, refined foods, canned foods, okay? All these, yes, those foods are kind of quick. They are foods that we can easily, pick and from the refrigerator and eat, but they are not too healthy for us. They are not too healthy for us. So we must reduce intake of such food. Instead, we must try to eat fresh foods, okay? And we also talked about red meats. Medical research has also shown that red meat increases people's risk of developing cardiovascular diseases and cancers, okay? Some kinds of cancer. So we must reduce our intake of red meat. Then another thing we can do is prevent the skin from being exposed to too much radiation from the sun. This most especially goes for skin cancer, okay? There are some level of temperature from the sun that is not too good for us. Sun exposure to an extent is good for our bodies, but if it gets over that particular temperature, it becomes a problem. So we must make sure that our skin is not too exposed to too much radiation from the sun. We must not stay so long in the sun. Then we must also maintain a clean and healthy environment. A clean, healthy environment makes sure that our bodies are also healthy, while living in a filthy or polluted environment can actually make us susceptible or prone to developing some non-communicable diseases. So if we put all these into practice, eating healthy diets, engaging in physical activities, staying away from processed foods and red meat, when we do all this, we can greatly reduce our risk of developing non-communicable diseases. Now, some of the non-communicable diseases we'll be considering are cancer, diabetes, sickle cell, stroke, and osteoporosis. So, but for this particular lesson, we'll be looking at cancer. When we come again in our next lesson, we'll look at the remaining 4. So, cancer. Cancer, I'm sure you must have been hearing of cancer. What is cancer? It is a group of diseases characterized by uncontrolled and abnormal cell growth, which can invade or spread to other parts of the body. So one characteristic of cancer is that there is an abnormal cell growth in the body, and it doesn't just stop there. These cells begin to spread to other parts of the body. So it's a non-communicable disease that affects people of all ages. Cancer can affect babies, it can affect young adults, and it can affect old people. Now, there are over 100 types of cancers that affect humans. They are just plenty, okay? Over 100 of them. We have brain cancer, we have lung cancer here, we have skin cancer, we have stomach cancer, and we have breast cancer. Now, women are mostly affected by breast cancer, lung cancer, cervical cancer, and colorectal cancer, while men are mostly affected by lung cancer, colorectal cancer, stomach cancer, and prostate cancer. What are some of the signs and symptoms of cancer? We have appearance of lumps. Most times, cancer shows by appearance of lumps, both the one that can be seen and the one that cannot be seen. Okay? For example, breast cancer most times shows as what? Lumps on the breast. Then we also have abnormal bleeding. Okay? This is another symptom of cancer. We have prolonged cough. Someone who has cancer may experience cough. Okay? Another sign is unexplained weight loss. So the person is just, losing weight abnormally. That's another sign of cancer. They will also have abnormal bowel movement. Disease factors associated with cancer. These are factors that increase a person's likelihood of developing cancer. They are tobacco smoking and excessive intake of alcohol. There's just still a list of all those risk factors for non-communicable diseases. One thing about non-communicable diseases is that they have, almost the same kind of risk factors. Okay, so we have lack of physical activities, obesity, aging. Some cancers actually develop when people get older. Okay, so that's one risk factor of cancer. Poor diet. Remember, we said that we must always eat balanced diet. So when some certain nutrients are missing from our diet, foods over a very long period of time, it can be a serious risk factor for developing cancer. Certain infections can also make us prone to cancer. Example, hepatitis B and C, and a kind of infection called human papillomavirus infection, and some other forms of infection that can make us prone to cancer. Then we have exposure to ionization, radiations, and environmental pollutants. Some pollutants in the environment make us prone to developing some kinds of cancer. So these are the risk factors for cancer. How can we prevent cancer, or at least reduce our risk of developing cancer. Many cancers can be prevented by doing the following: staying away from smoking and alcohol. We must have zero tolerance for smoking and alcohol, and we must also discourage people around us from smoking, okay? Because one thing about smoking is that there is something we call secondhand smoking. So it's a case where you are not the one smoking, but someone who is smoking is close to you and you're inhaling the smoke. So you are just as good as the person who is smoking, all right? So if you have people that are always smoking around you, you also stand the risk of developing cancer, especially cancer of the lungs. Another cancer prevention is maintaining a healthy weight, okay? Maintaining a healthy weight actually keeps a lot of diseases away from us. Apart from cardiovascular diseases and diabetes, it also helps with cancer prevention. Exercising and being physically active. We have also said that exercising helps to strengthen our immune system. Another one is eating a healthy diet that includes fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Vaccination against certain infectious diseases. Reducing the intake of processed foods and red meat, and avoiding too much exposure to sunlight. So these are some things we must take note of and make sure we do them in order to prevent cancer. Cancer treatment. For people who already have cancer in their body, there are some treatments available for them. Such treatments include surgery. Some cancers may need surgery for the tumors to be reduced. For example, brain cancer, okay, where there is presence of a tumor in the body, or even breast cancer, when there are lumps in the breast. Such a person may need to undergo surgery to remove those lumps or tumors. Then we also have radiation therapy. It's another cancer treatment. We have chemotherapy. Then we also have targeted therapy. These are the different treatments given to cancer patients depending on the nature of the cancer. Remember, we say we have over 100 types of cancer. So depending on the nature of the cancer, we would have any of these treatment plans. So with this, we have come to the end of this lesson. So we'll quickly summarize. We say that non-communicable diseases are chronic diseases that are not contagious or transmitted from an infected host to a healthy host. Then we outline some risk factors for non-communicable diseases. They are dietary habits, environmental conditions, heredity, family background, history, and lifestyle. Then we also mention some preventive measures against non-communicable diseases. They include eating balanced diet, maintaining a healthy weight, engaging in physical exercises, avoiding tobacco smoking, and excessive intake of alcohol. Some non-communicable diseases are cancer, diabetes, sickle cell, stroke, and osteoporosis. In our next lesson, we'll be looking at the other types of non-communicable diseases. So we'll quickly take some questions. Number one, which of the following is not a characteristic of non-communicable diseases? A, they are long-lasting. B, they are incurable. C, they progress slowly. Which of these is not a characteristic of non-communicable diseases? Well, the answer is B. From our lesson, we say that the features of non-communicable diseases is that they are long-lasting and they progress slowly. Number two question. Which of these is a treatment for cancer? A, chemotherapy. B, vaccination. C, hemoglobin transplant. The answer to this question is chemotherapy. From our lesson, we learned that one of the treatments we can give to cancer is chemotherapy. So with this, we have come to the end of this lesson. Thank you for staying with me.